see you in the middle of gangland, it's going down. You're like, dang, I just got to survive and make it through.
Yep.
And what's crazy is because I don't know anything about California prisons, just from the brief, like interactions I may have seen on YouTube or whatever the stories I've heard. I obviously know it goes down in Cali. But I always thought that San Quentin was like the worst of the worst in Cali. So is that not necessarily true? Where you were at first, was that worse than San Quentin? And then segue us, take us into your transition in San Quentin, and then speed us up to when things begin to change, your routine, your structure, and then we'll go ahead and move forward to your release.
For sure. So yes, in San Quentin, everybody thinks that, right? Because back in the 80s and 90s, like California was like, or San Quentin was, one is death row. It still is death row. That's where they house, anybody sentenced to death. So you have that reputation. But then all through the 80s and 90s, like that's where the Aryan Brotherhood and all the like the Mexican Mafia, the Black Guerrilla family, like that's where that was their house. Um, and so like Murder Alley, like
Mm.
there's all places all over San Quentin that like there's history of bloodshed. And uh, today though it's the opposite. It's
Mm.
a low, obviously structural wise, because there's so many blind spots and it's such an old prison, they've built newer prisons that are designed to be more safe, right?
Mm.
And cohesive to a more threatened prisoner, right? So because it's in the Bay Area, very liberal, lots of stuff going on, lots of resources. Today it's the opposite. Like there's over 3,000 volunteers going into the prison every year. Over 100 self-help programs, college on campus, we call it campus,
Mm.
college program, people getting their AAs, bachelor's, masters. So it's the opposite. And when I arrived, like that's when I originally, like I wanted to go to San Quentin for two reasons. They had a baseball program, the only baseball program in the country that plays civilian teams, and a college program. I went through prison. I go hit the max yards and get to San Quentin. I already have a false mail roll belief system that I'm
Mm.
operating under. Then I pick up this like this prison belief system, and so I get to San Quentin, and it's like it's a level two. Like it's so much more relaxed. They shot me to a dorm. I ain't ever done time in a dorm, so that was like culture shock, and ultimately I couldn't do it. Like I was like, man, I'm not gonna do like I think I had like 6 years to do at the time. I'm like, I'm
Mm.
not doing 6 years in a dorm, and so I justified a reason like why I need to get out of that prison and go back to cell living, which is at least the level three max yard, and so I found a dude who had bad paperwork, went and jumped on him. And in the process of me jumping on him, because the only way you could transfer out of prison if you want to remain GP and stay in good standing is through violence.
Mm.
Like you can't go to your counselors or go to the officers like, oh, I don't want to be at this prison. It's not an option.
Yeah.
And so I've picked a dude. I was like, I'm gonna get him and get up out of here. And in the process, a guard had come, and it's crazy because I knew everybody in the Bay, like just from the stuff I was doing before going to prison. With the crew, with some of my family and friends, stunt riding Harleys, and just like the crew I had, like we knew a lot of people. And so I had known a lot of officers, or a lot of officers had known me. And this officer who knew me, he didn't want to use pepper spray or the baton. And so he comes running up to pull me off of a dude. And I just turn and blast him.
Oh man.
And so, if anybody knows anything about like prison, like they ain't really tripping if you fight each other, but you
Mm.
don't hit one of them.
Yeah.
So uh, they did their thing with me. And I ended up doing almost a year in solitary confinement. Picked up 4 additional years, and so because like my past, and just kind of the reputation that I had at San Quentin, they decided to put me in the adjustment center. So the adjustment center is the hole for death row. It was originally created for when guys get sentenced to death. They go to the adjustment center for undetermined amount of time until the administration feels they could go out to the death row housing unit. But it's also used for the whole for the guys on death row. So it's like the most secure housing unit in the state. I had been sent there, and it was like it was bittersweet because on one end, and like I really was delivered. My addiction, like God delivered me during this time. But like it was a scary time because like I'm surrounded by serial killers.
Mhm.
Like the one dude who Stomper, um, they call him Stomper. He white dude, AB. I think he had like 8 bodies, and we were out. Obviously, when they take us to the yard, we're in walk alone cages, and we were set out on the yard, and he's just talking to me like I got so much points stacking up on me. I have this DA referral, like I'm going to court now because hitting the officer, and he's like, man, like what do you want? Like what do you want out of life? You want to go see your family, or like you want to be a prison tough guy? And I'm like, well, like, yeah, I want to go to my family. He says, then, man, like, if you're trying to be like that prison tough guy, go kill word for word, kill everything till you come back here. Cause like, this is the worst of the worst. Everybody else is faking it. He says, if I could go back before I ever committed a crime and ever got linked up with the gangs, I would have never chose this life. But I'm committed. And like, this was the one dude that like, he'd take his glass off. The one person that like, I really like, this dude's scary. Like, I'm not trying to like, and I'm only like God fearing man, but like this is that one dude who like, yeah, I'm cool, and he's like he gave me this perspective. And so I went back to the cell that day and it was just like man, like God hit me. Like I was like that's when I was delivered.